All right. Good evening, everybody. Come on in. I see we already got 17 people in the room. Joe White, thank you for joining us. DMG, thank you for joining us. Um, Go ahead and drop a line. Tell me what country you're from, what city, state you're rolling in from. And do this. Hit that like button. Boom it. Bash it on your way in. And if you are new here, subscribe. If you've been rocking with me on Substack, you already know this is the part right here where I stop pretending the room is not on fire and start asking who the hell struck the match. All right. And tonight I'm doing something a little different here. I'm not just reacting to a video, I'm going to be interrogating it because this brother here, Professor Jiang, and I wrote a Substack article on it earlier. You saw the thumbnail for it. He opens up sounding like he's not giving a lecture. He sounds like he's delivering a dispatch from the edge of the abyss. And to be fair, some of what he's saying is serious enough that you cannot just laugh it off, but some of it also needs to be cross examined. And that's where this Professor Jiang comes in, because Professor Jiang's warning, as I read it, is not simply that America can get itself into a war with Iran. It is that empire has a habit of confusing destruction with strategy. It thinks because it can hit something, it understands it. It thinks because it can break something, it can rule what comes after. That is the frame tonight. So I'm gonna roll this video in peace. You know what? And what I should have done is schooled you all on who Professor Jiang is. We were online earlier this afternoon discussing my post. So what I'm going to do for you guys is I'm going to read some excerpts um, from the post. So just to give those who haven't read it an idea of why we're talking about this Professor Wang. Let me go ahead and pull it up on screen. Well, I don't need to do that. Let me just read this. Professor Jiang, and I'm reading this from my Substack, is Zhuang Zhuquin. I hope I pronounced that right. He's a Beijing-based. Um, Hold on, let me put that screen up. Okay, there we go. And you know what? I'm gonna take it even a step further there so you guys can see it. Professor Jiang is a Beijing based educator who teaches at a private high school, not a university. The clean version of his credentials is straightforward. He earned a BA in English literature from Yale College. Okay, where does he teach? Moonshot Academy. Well, let me go back to this here. This is important. This is credentials. He earned a BA in English literature from Yale College, and Harvard's own GE 11 bio says he graduated with distinction in English literature from Yale in 1999. Okay, so where does he teach? Um, Moonshot Academy lists him as an English teacher and philosophy teacher in Beijing and it names the exact course he teaches, Western Philosophy. It's a year-long survey built around primary texts, Plato, Descartes, and the usual canon that produces either clarity or insomnia, depending on the student. So the professor thing is more of an honorific than a job title. He is called Professor Jiang in media and in the viral clips, but the institutional paper trail says teacher. Okay, why do people keep saying Harvard affiliated? Because Harvard's Global Education Innovation Initiative lists him on its research team and describes him as an educator. So when you hear him forecasting geopolitics, you're not hearing a general. You're hearing a teacher who has been studying how institutions manufacture belief and then applying that same logic to empire. And that lens here, it is not a spreadsheet. So we're going to go ahead and roll into the video. I'm going to do it in pieces. All right. I'm going to stop. I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to also make points. And I want y'all thinking with me, not just staring at the screen, like war is another Netflix category or something. So, hey, let's get into it. Let's roll the video. So this is part of a lecture series that he has put online, and the title of this is Game Theory number 9. This is number 9 in the series right here, as you can see, the U.S. Iran War. So let's go ahead and roll it.
To the end of the world. So as you know, World War III has started. The United States and Israel have started to attack Iran. And we are now in the 4th day of this war. And we can expect...
Okay, already I have to stop it right there. First question, what happens to your brain when somebody opens with maybe I think I clipped it off, but he opened with welcome back to the end of the world? What does that do to you? Because that's not neutral analysis right there. That is emotional priming. Okay. That right there is a man telling you before he gives you even one bit of evidence how you are supposed to feel. Now, that doesn't automatically make him wrong, but it does tell me that I need to watch not just his facts, but his mood management. And this is the first Jiang point, and it's only been a minute. Um, let's go ahead and roll the video. Roll it, roll it, roll it. Am I clicking the wrong video link here?
This
Okay, there we
war
go.
lasts for many weeks, possibly also for many years. But I promise you that after this war is done, the world will never be the same again. So what we will do these next few weeks is use game theory and understand and analyze the geopolitical situation. And so I'm going to teach you the ideas, the theories, the techniques to understand the world around you and make predictions. And we can know if our analysis is correct because all this is happening in real time And so we can test it against reality. All right, so let's go over some basic facts about what's happened so far. So in the early morning of Saturday in Tehran, the Israelis and Americans launched a decapitation strike against the Ayatollah Khamenei, who is the supreme leader of Iran. Now, there are arguments and disputes about as to what happened. The Americans and Israelis said that they had real intelligence about where the leader was, and so they sent airplanes to just bomb the crap out of a place. They also had a spy who was able to record the body of the dead Ayatollah, and then this was announced. At first, the Iranians denied this, and the Iranians insisted he was still alive. But eventually, state media admitted that he did die in the airstrike. But then what they also said is that the Ayatollah, he's 86 years old, and he chose to die. He could have gone to Moscow, but instead he chose to stay in Tehran and die for his people. But not only that, but he died along many of his relatives. He died along with his daughter, his son-in-law, his grandchildren. So many of the family died in this assault. Also, there's been reporting that he had prostate cancer. Okay, so he was going to die fairly soon as well. So what you need to understand first about the war is that even though the Americans and Israelis claim great success in decapitating the leadership of the Iranians, from the Iranian perspective, this is a martyrdom, okay? And so the religion of the Iranians is called Shia Muslim. And this is different from Sunni Muslim. So Sunnis are the majority. They're about 9% of all Muslims in the world. The Shia have always been the minority. And as such, they've always been persecuted. So in the Shia faith, the core value, the force that binds everyone together and gives them purpose and meaning in life, that galvanizes them into action, is the idea of martyrdom, which forces jihad. You sacrifice yourself for your religion, sacrifice yourself for the common good. So think of the death of Khamenei as a sacrifice, a self-sacrifice, in order to motivate the Iranians in this war, okay? So that's the first thing you need to understand. That for the Iranians, this is not a geopolitical war. This is not an economic war. This is not a war of resistance. This is a jihad, okay? It's a war against the great Satan to avenge their leader. They will fight to the death, all right? That's number one. Number two is this. Also that morning, when
Okay, pause it.
It's really struck a school
There.
in the south of Tehran, killing about 150.
Let me pause it right there. Look, he's saying the assassination of a top religious and political figure would not weaken Iran the way Americans might imagine. He's arguing it could harden resolve and that it could turn state violence into some type of a sacred narrative. Now, that part, at least structurally, is not crazy. Empires make this mistake all the time. They imagine the removal of one leader means the collapse of meaning, but meaning is not a person. You feel me? Meaning is a story, meaning is a memory, meaning is grievance. So here's where I want to slow him down and back it up. When he says, in essence, this is a jihad, they will fight to the death, is he clarifying motivation or flattening millions of people into one big religious destiny? Because that matters. Because one of the oldest tricks in imperial thinking is to turn a society into a single psychological type, right? Fanatic, tribal, irrational, martyr, savage. Once you do that, you stop needing sociology. You stop needing memory, art, that's history, and you stop needing class analysis. You stop needing politics altogether. You just say, well, they're like that. And I get it. Jiang's larger warning is it pushes back against that kind of simplification if you do not understand the actual structure of a society. You don't understand the war that you're fantasizing about in your mind. So I'll put it like this, right? Yes, martyrdom can matter. Yes, symbolism can radicalize. But listen, anytime a commentator starts turning a whole population into one emotion, I need more than tone here. I need evidence. All right. Now we're going to roll into the next section about the that tragic bombing of the schoolgirls. Let me roll it back just a little bit. And here we go.
Killing about 150 school children. These are girls in primary school. And again, there's a lot of debate and argument as to what happened. This really said that, first of all, the school was next to a military base. We were targeting a military base. And second of all, it wasn't us which struck the school. It was a air defense missile that went off course. Okay? And the Iranians insisted no. The Israelis purposefully attacked the school to kill the school children. And then you're like, why would the Israelis do that? But then these few years, well, we've seen what they've done in Gaza, in Palestine to the Palestinians. And it's pretty consistent what the Israelis have been doing. All right? So this action against the Israelis, it's meant to show to themselves and the world that we are now all in. Okay? We've made the sacrifice. We are now committed to this war, to winning this war at all costs. And this action has also provoked the Iranian people to resist with their full might, okay? So I want you to keep this in mind. And again, we don't have complete evidence that it's the Israelis who did this, but given past actions from the Israelis, this is fairly consistent with what they've done, okay? So we can assume that this is something the Israelis did. Why they did this, what the purpose is something we will discuss as we move on, okay? It's very complicated. Next, I want to show you.
Okay, so listen carefully to the move he just made here in that section. He says there is dispute. He says evidence is incomplete. Then he slides into given past actions. This is well, quote unquote, given past actions. This is fairly consistent. So we can assume no. Whenever you hear someone use the word assume, your ears should perk up. That is not analysis. That is inference doing way too much of the heavy lifting here. Now let me be clear. States lie in war. Militaries lie in war. Governments absolutely manufacture narratives in war. We know that. But if you're going to accuse somebody of deliberately killing children in a specific incident, you need more than it feels consistent. You need documentation, you need sourcing, you need something beyond moral plausibility because you know what's going to happen. People are going to take this clip, put it in TikTok, on TikTok, do reaction videos. Not the way I do it. I bring receipts, but you know, try to twist it to make it sound like something else. And you know, This is also where I part company with a lot of internet war commentary. People mistake pattern recognition for proof. Jiang helps here too, because one of the things that my post that I was reading earlier was wrestling with is how elites and commentators alike can fall in love with their own model. You know, once the model feels right, every new fact gets forced into it. And that's dangerous, y'all, because then what happens, you stop learning. You just start confirming yourself. And that is never ever a good thing. Let's roll the video.
This. This is Dubai, and Dubai is considered one of the wealthiest, safest cities in the world. There are thousands, tens of thousands of Westerners who move to Dubai because it's clean, you don't pay any taxes, you make a lot of money, and there are great restaurants. And this is really the economic model of Dubai. It's one of the GCC countries, okay, the Gulf coastal countries. And for the longest time, Dubai had a really good deal because they were under the protection of the American military. So they didn't have to pay for defense. And then they were in the Middle East, which is the oil producing center of the world. And so they focus on aviation, they focus on logistics, they focus on finance, on tourism. They became extremely wealthy, right? I'm not sure if you've taken Emirates, one of the best airlines in the world. So their airport, Dubai Airport, is the busiest in the world. And Dubai, for the longest time, was flourishing under American protection. And Dubai said to the world, listen, we're like Switzerland. We're neutral. We don't want any involvement in any wars. We're here just to take care of our citizens, to make sure everyone has a good time, to make money. And then right after the war started, the Iranians attacked the GCC, okay? Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, they attacked these places. And these places were like, what's going on? We're neutral, man. We're not involved in this war. And the airport was shut down in Dubai. At one point, the rich people in Dubai were willing to pay about 250,000 US dollars just to get on a plane and get out of there. Okay? So the reality is this. For the longest time, Dubai had a reputation for being safe, and that's why people moved their money there. Guess what, guys? After what the Iranians did, it's dead. Dubai as a city, in the long term, it is dead. Because you're a wealthy Westerner, you're not going to move to a place where it could be attacked anytime by the Iranians. You might move to Singapore, you might move to Hong Kong, Japan, South America, but you're not moving to Dubai, okay? So the big question for us is, why did the Iranians do this? It's really the Americans who attacked you. Why go after the GCC? All right? And not only that, but they're escalating the attacks against the GCC. So this is something that we will look at very closely today. Well, the short answer.
Now, this is where he gets interesting again. He's basically saying the so-called neutral prosperity of Gulf states is not really neutral at all. It sits under American military protection, American financial architecture, and American strategic dominance. So if Iran wants to strike the American system, it doesn't have to hit Washington first. It can hit the joints, right? The pressure points, the luxury zones, pretending to be above politics. And that part is worth sitting with, because it does sound a little extreme when he says Dubai is dead or the GCC will eventually collapse. But beneath that drama is a real question. how much of American, how much of modern wealth is just stability theater underwritten by force? And that ain't a stupid question. That's actually a very sharp question. But here's my problem here. He keeps leaping from vulnerability to inevitability. And vulnerable is not the same as doomed here. Exposed is not the same as finished. You know, a good analyst distinguishes between pressure, disruption, degradation, and collapse. You know, a preacher of doom runs them all together because it sounds better on camera. And again, Jiang's warning is useful. America's adversaries do not need to beat America in some movie scene. They just need to exploit the brittleness of the system. But exploiting brittleness isn't the same thing as instant apocalypse. Before we go to the next section, I just want to acknowledge any comments that we have in the live chat and any new visitors who just walked in. Let's see, what is this? We got Oregon Boating Guy. Thank you for joining us. We got Kath D. Thank you for, I hope I'm reading your name correct here. The lights are, I should have worn my sunglasses tonight. Fred joined. Thank you for coming in. Joe White wanted to add to the discussion. You said, yes, 9 hospitals were also hit. I did see a little tidbit on that in the news. And David Gardner wanted to say something about jihad here. He says, misinterpretation of jihad, because we associate that with instantly with terrorism. And I think that has a lot to do with the misuse of the term by extremists, religious extremists. So let me just read what he says here. Misinterpretation of jihad. Jihad is a personal struggle to become closer to our origin and to love our fellows and welcome the stranger. Okay. Um, how many people do you think actually think would be open-minded enough to just accept that on face value? I'm not saying you're wrong, David. I'm just saying that the type of climate that we have today basically, you know, treats Muslims, which are a sizable majority of people on this earth, as, you know, cockroaches. So, you know, and it's not fair, it's not right. Listen, even under George W. Bush's campaign on terror, even with all the abuses there, they went to great lengths not to frame this war as some type of crusade or Christian crusade. Today, the administration has been doing the opposite. Um, I'm getting off track here. Let's go back to the video. And hey, if anybody, I see Liberty Luminary here, you just joined. I keep my eyes on that chat. So if you got anything you want to add or say, feel free to go ahead and chime in. Oh, and hit the like button. Hit that like button.
Answer is because these places, even though they pretend to be neutral, they house the American military. They allow the Israelis and Americans to use their airspace to attack Iran from. All right, so this is Bahrain. Now, Bahrain is interesting, okay? Because I want you guys to remember this, but Bahrain will probably be one of the major centers of this conflict. Because, first of all, this is the American Fifth Fleet, all right? This is their naval base in the Middle East. And as you can see, the Iranians are attacking it with missiles, and it's being blown up. Bahrain is interesting because it has about 50% or even more, okay, Shia, which is the religion of the Iranians. But the people in charge are the Sunnis. And so what makes this strike really important from our perspective is, first of all, not only are the Iranians attacking US military assets, not only are they destroying the economies of the GCC, but they're also trying to ignite a religious war, right? Because you're Shia, you're loyal to the Ayatollah. And if he's dead, then you must, as a religious obligation, now commit jihad against your enemies. And it's no different in other religions where, listen, if you want to kill the Pope, the Catholics would be really angry at you and they would want to kill you, right? So now you have the Shia who will probably eventually arise, creating a revolution in Bahrain, okay? So I think Bahrain will be the first to fall. Dubai will probably go bankrupt, okay? But in the long term, we can expect the entire GCC area, including Saudi Arabia, to eventually collapse, okay? And so this is something we'll use game theory to understand. All right, let's continue. So,
And
we will know how this war develops.
Now, we are at the heart of his argument, which is geography, okay? Logistics, water.
Just based on geography, okay?
Food.
So this is a map. This map, even if you don't really know the war, if you don't know the participants.
Okay. What was I saying? All right, I was talking about the heart of his argument, geography, logistics, water, food, oil, shipping lanes. And this is where the video is strongest, all right? It's forcing people to think materially instead of morally. Not who is good, who is evil, who started it, who deserves it. But he is asking what keeps these places alive, what can be choked, what can be interrupted, what can be made expensive. That is real analysis right there. And frankly, this is also why Jiang's forecast hit people so hard, right? Because Jiang has that same cold-blooded quality when he is locked in. He makes you look at structure, all right? Not slogans, not cable news patriotism, structure. But even here, I want to ask the question. I don't think he's asking enough. If both sides inflict catastrophic destruction, what counts as victory? Huh? Because if victory means you turn whole regions into water stress, refugees, wrecked infrastructure, and retaliatory chaos, then what you are really describing is not strategy. It's mutual degradation. And here's the sentence I least want to say out loud. This country has a habit of mistaking the ability to kill for the ability to govern. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the trap. Roll the video.
Even if you don't know the weaponry, this map will tell you exactly how this war will progress. All right, so some certain things to keep in mind about this map. This is what we call this area, okay, really small, it's 33 kilometers wide, okay? People can swim across it. It's really, really narrow, okay? This small area, guys, it's called the Strait of Hormuz, all right? And it's important because it's really the center of the world. This one area is the nexus, the pivot of the world. Let me explain why. First of all, from the GCC, you have 20% of all the world's oil flowing through this narrow strait. Where does it go, guys? It goes to Asia, India, Pakistan, South Korea, China, Japan. India depends on 60% of its oil from this area. China depends on 40%. Japan, 75%. Prime Minister Takeichi of Japan has said that, listen, if the Strait of Hormuz closes, we'll run out of oil in about 8-9 months. The entire Japanese economy would collapse in 8-9 months if the Strait of Hormuz were to close. And guess what? The Iranians have closed the Strait of Hormuz. Okay? So we can expect that the entire global economy will suffer greatly over the next few months. All right, so that's point number one. Point number two is, okay, so the GCC sends oil across the Strait of Hormuz, and what do they get back in return? Food, guys. All right, so people don't appreciate the GCC, but it is really the linchpin of the American Empire.
There, I'm working on
because
that
what's
right
the
now.
American Empire? The
Get some windows closed to free up some memory here.
American Empire is the petrodollar. All right? The idea of the petrodollar is this. The US dollar is worth nothing. It's only says that if you want oil from us, you have to pay us in US dollar. So, if the GCC collapses, the American economy and the American empire both collapse at the same time. The problem, though, is that GCC is an artificial construct of empire. It does not exist naturally. Why? Because there's no food, there's no oil, no water. Okay, guys? No food, no water. So these cities are able to grow in the millions because of all these petrodollars flowing in. If you close off the Strait of Hormuz, there's no food coming in, right? They're all going to starve. How much food does the GCC get from overseas? 80%. 80% of all the food it consumes comes from overseas, that it imports. It doesn't grow by itself, it imports. All right? So the Strait of Hormuz is really key. And again, the Iranians will close it in order to strangle the global economy and therefore bankrupt the American empire. All right? Second thing you will notice is these mountains. These mountains is what we call Iran. All right, this is Iran. This is GCC. Okay, this is not a fair matchup, right? Because these are mountains. And what can you do in mountains? Well, you can hide rocket bases. You can hide drone bases. You can hide missiles. And that's the entire Iranian offensive strategy, all right? From here, they can hide missiles and drones from which to attack the GCC. And what are they attacking? They're attacking three things, right? They're attacking American military bases. American military bases. That's number one. Okay? Is it possible for the Americans to defend against these attacks? The answer is no. It's not. It's the silliest thing in the world. You have all these bases in the Middle East, but you cannot defend them against the Iranians. That's kind of strange. but that's number one. Number two is oil and energy. How hard is it to blow up an oil field with a drone? Not hard at all. Can you defend these oil fields? No, you cannot. All right? Number three, and this is most important, is water. Okay? You guys don't know this, but the GCC has little access to fresh water. So the only way that it can produce water is what we call desalination plants, okay? These factories that take salt water and then through an electrochemical process, turn it into fresh water for the population to use. 60% of the water supply in HEC comes from desalination plants, okay? 60%. Is it hard to blow up a desalination plant using a drone? The answer is, it's very easy. You understand? Okay? So you have this absurd situation where Iran is a mountain fortress where it can hide its offensive capacity, and the GCC, it's just this desert, this flat desert, and it is exposed to attack, and there's nothing it can do about it. Okay? So at any point in this war, the Iranians can choose to just destroy the entire GCC, and there's nothing that anyone can do about it. Okay, but Iran also has a weakness, okay, and this is fundamental. So Iran also has a water problem, okay? So for the longest time, they suffered a drought issue, okay, just climate change. And so what the plan of the Israelis and Americans is destroy the water supply of the Iranians. Because the fortress, it is a mountain fortress, but it can also be a mountain prison as well, where people are trapped inside with no access to water. Okay, so what we're going to see right now, we're already seeing attacks on civilian infrastructure, hospitals. In the future, you'll see attacks on water supply, on dams, on reservoirs, on power plants. The idea is to make Iran so inhabitable that the people will have to rebel against the people, or there'll be a refugee crisis in Iran. Okay? So as you can see from this map, this war, it is the end of the world. Okay? Both sides have the potential to destroy each other. It's really a question of how far do they want to go. All right? We can also say this is almost a game of chicken. Okay? We can blow each other up. How far do you want to go? And the problem is this. The problem is that the Iranians are Shia, which believes in martyrdom. And you've killed the religious leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei. So they're willing to go very, very far. The GCC countries are Muslim, but they're materialistic. They love money. And also, most of the population are expatriates, foreigners. 90% of Dubai are foreigners. Guess what's going to happen if they suffer? They're going to run away. Okay? So this is not a fair matchup. The big question that people have is, first of all, are the Americans going to use ground troops?
Here we go.
Because the only way that you can defeat Iran is by using ground troops, okay? That's a big question we'll look at in the next few weeks. Will America send its army, 500,000, 2 million soldiers to topple the government? Okay, that's question number one. Question number two, nuclear weapons. If you're losing a war, would you choose to use nuclear weapons? Okay, that's another big question that we have, okay? Now, another big question that we have is who gets involved? Because this situation is so dire that Europe, okay, specifically Germany, France, and Britain are talking about entering this war. And guess what? If that happens, it is possible that Russia and China will also enter this war on the side of the Iranians. This is World War III. Okay? Because of the importance of the Strait of Hormuz, because of the importance of the Middle East, everyone has to get involved at some point. And we're going to use game theory to really try to understand what's happening on the ground and where this could lead us. Okay?
You know, the whole idea that Europe and then China and Russia could get dragged or get involved in this conflict is not as far fetched as it may initially seem. Um, if e if Iran is lobbing missiles at a country that is a NATO member, right? According to the articles established, or the articles governing NATO, they would have to respond. So he said a lot there. Let's slow this down. That whole section, and that's why I tried to just let him talk, be quiet. But I'm going to respond now. That whole section. This is where he jumps from severe regional war logic into full on civilizational crescendo. Ground troops, nukes, Europe enters, China enters, World War III. Possible, I guess, in some abstract sense, lots of nightmares are possible. Probable, eh, that's a whole different standard. Okay. And this is where internet geopolitical commentary loves to live in possibility, not impossibility, but possibility inflation. If I say enough frightening things in a row, what happens, right? Your nervous system starts treating possibility like likelihood. Now, that's what doom scrolling is about. Listen, we need to separate escalation pathways from imminent destiny. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know every military variable. I do not. There are people who have spent, dedicated their entire lives to studying these things. Okay. And I think people who talk about war with a little too much swagger should scare you more than war itself. But I do know this. When somebody says this is World War III in the middle of a lecture, I need them to show their work like this is math class. Because otherwise we're just doing eschatology with military vocabulary. All right. Roll the video.
All right. You guys understand? All right. All right. Let's
You
continue.
understand? All right.
Okay, so again,
Continue.
there are American bases all over the Middle East. And originally, these bases were established to protect them from basically their own people. Okay, these are monarchies that were imposed on these nations by the Anglo-American Empire, the British first, and then the Americans came to support these monarchies. And so they provide defense. But then you're like, wait a minute here. I mean, didn't we just say that these American bases can actually defend these people, that they're exposed? And the answer is yes, that's true. But remember, like the American military was built during the Cold War. Okay? And the Cold War.
All right. I just want you to take a look at that map. You need to see where your tax dollars are going. You just need to be aware of that. I was in the military, And I was not even aware of how big a footprint that our military has across the Middle East. Look at all those red dots.
Was a war between the Soviet Union and America. And so the Cold War was defined as something called MAD, mutually assured destruction, because both had nuclear weapons, okay? So they didn't really go to war against each other. And so in other words, these bases aren't really meant to defend these nations from other enemies. They're really meant to impose American authority in the Middle East, okay? And it's the idea of this. It's the idea that empire, it is really a image. It is a hallucination. It's just an idea. Empire is it's an aura of invincibility and inevitability, okay? If you fear it, then you obey it. But it's not really designed to fight a war, okay? And so that's why we have this absurd situation. And because there are so many bases in the GCC, that gives the Iranians the perfect pretext to attack them in order to destroy the GCC economy, which will destroy the American empire, right? All right, so this is how the war is shaping out, okay? So the red is the Israelis and the Americans. The yellow are flowing through this narrow strait. Where does it go, guys? It
All right.
goes
I
to
apologize
Asia,
for that.
India,
I was trying to pause the
Pakistan,
video.
South Korea, China.
I tell you what, while I'm trying to fix that, I just wanted to make a comment about um the this will destroy the American empire. I don't think he has, and maybe he'll do that in his later lectures. What does that mean? Because if you're a student of history, people have been um musing on the destruction of the American empire for, ever since we went off the gold standard under Richard Nixon, ever since we lost um, the Vietnam War. That was supposed to be, the war that proved or put us out there as a paper tiger, right? So that's just one of the questions that are going through my mind here. Let me try and get back to where we were in the video. Okay, here we go. All those red dots right there, right? Okay,
The
roll it.
Cold War was defined as something called MAD, mutually assured destruction, because both had nuclear weapons, okay? So they didn't really go to war against each other. And so in other words, these bases aren't really meant to defend these nations from other enemies. They're really meant to impose American authority in the Middle East, okay? And it's the idea of this. It's the idea that empire, it is really a image. It is a hallucination. It's just an idea. Empire is it's an aura of invincibility and inevitability, okay? If you fear it, then you obey it. But it's not really designed to fight a war, okay? And so that's why we have this absurd situation. And because there are so many bases in the GCC, that gives the Iranians the perfect pretext to attack them in order to destroy the GCC economy, which will destroy the American empire, right? All right, so this is how the war is shaping out, okay? So the red is the Israelis and the Americans. The yellow are the Iranians. And as you can see, the Iranians are attacking everywhere, primarily Israel, okay? But also, as you can see, a lot of focus.
Okay, stop it right there. I want to add some more. I want to comment on this empire is a hallucination doctrine and asymmetry corruption. And this might be the best section in the whole video, not because I buy every word of it, but because now he's finally naming the psychological architecture of empire. He says empire is an image illusion, a hallucination, an aura, something people obey, right? Something people obey because they fear it. So even though I've watched this video, this is like the third time I've watched it. Um, the question that I had earlier as to the definition of what constitutes um, America ceasing to be an empire, well, it's psychological. I think he just kind of answered that question here. He's using powerful language, and honestly, that part fits Professor Jiang better than some of the more overheated prophecy earlier. Because listen, this is the deeper issue right here. What if American power is still lethal but less intelligent than it thinks? What if our military procurement system is built to look unbeatable rather than adapt quickly? What if big, expensive, prestigious systems are less useful against cheap, flexible, distributed warfare? That question matters a lot, but then he keeps it going. He says the military is corrupt. It doesn't care about winning, it cares about spending. Now, I understand the anger in that claim, and I understand why people find it persuasive, but I still need some nuance here. Corruption exists, contractor bloat does exist, bureaucratic inertia exists. None of that means every failure reduces to greed. All right. Sometimes systems fail because they are overbuilt for old wars. Sometimes they fail because doctrine lags behind reality. Sometimes they fail because empires get drunk on their own mythology. And that right there is the Jiang overlap, so to speak. Not just corruption. We're talking about arrogance, inertia, and the inability to psychologically update when the history changes. Roll the clip.
On Bahrain and Qatar. And again, the intention is to destabilize the economy and the government. Okay, it's to try to get as much instability as possible. All right? Okay, and as you can see, the Americans and Israelis are focused on Tehran. And so the Americans and the Israelis use something we call shock and awe. And the very idea of shock and awe is you decapitate the enemy. You cut off the head, the body will fall down, okay? The problem, though, is, again, the Iranians see this as a religious war. And so the Iranians have announced total war. Okay? And so what this means is that right now, command and control in Iran is decentralized. There's no one person telling everyone what to do. Every region has its own orders, has its own strategy. And so if you knock out Tehran, everyone else keeps on going. So if you take off the head, it doesn't change anything. Okay? But unfortunately, the Israelis and Americans use this as a military doctrine. Military doctrine just means how you design your military for what purpose. And so even though the Americans seem like an invincible army, they are not equipped to fight a 21st century war against drones, against destabilization, against religious fanatics. Okay, they're just not. All right. But unfortunately, because of military doctrine, they're going to keep on attacking Tehran. Now, the great irony of all this is that the Iranians who will be most supportive of of regime change are actually in the cities because they are educated, they're progressive. The people who are most fundamentally against you, will fight you to the death, are religious fanatics, the Shia militants living in the
Mm-hmm.
rural areas. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a really silly thing where you are actually destroying those who will most likely support you,
Mm-hmm.
and you're leaving alone those who are most likely to commit jihad against you. All right? Any questions so far, guys? Are you clear? All right. So another idea that I want.
Any questions so far, guys? Are you clear? I think somebody had a question. Hippie hippie, Shelly, you're back. Bob, thank you for joining. Paul K, thank you for joining. Tara L, I see you. Kendra Lee, I see you. And David Gardner, he's got another comment here. He says most of the best strategies, or sorry, most of the best strategists have been fired by Pete Hegseth because they took their jobs too seriously. Um, so you know, I don't know. Um, Military strategy is what the art of war is something that is grounded in military strategy, right? It's the basis of military strategy. I kind of look at military strategies almost like math, right? Um, and I guess you know, if you really want to get rid of the mathematicians and bring in some mathematicians who are fooling with the numbers, I guess if you look at it that way, yeah, I guess bring in the military statistician or military strategists um, who validate what I already want to do, right? Who um, will just be yes men. And that's very, very dangerous. All right. Very, very dangerous. What do we talk about here? What do we go over here? Um, Kind of getting lost here. Let's go ahead and roll the clip. And Nancy Kedja Whiskey, thank you for joining us.
You guys to understand this idea of asymmetry. Asymmetry. All right, so what is asymmetry? Asymmetry means that the two sides are choosing to fight different wars using different techniques because one is much stronger than the other, okay? America is the great.
Okay, listen, before we get into this, I kind of got lost in my notes here. Um, this is very important because this is the section where I need everybody to kind of put both feet on the floor here because he is no longer describing just vulnerability, right? He's um he's saying the long game of America and Israel, if I remember correctly, right? It's to fracture along ethnic lines, weaponize water scarcity, and destroy Iran as a coherent nation. That's a huge claim that I just don't want to let pass on by. And I'm not saying dismiss it. I'm saying do not just inhale it because the music in your head got dramatic. Listen, ask this question. What evidence would prove that? What pattern of behavior would support it? What documents, speeches, policies, proxy relationships, or operational choices would elevate that from inference to case? Because this is where people who are right about one structural thing can become reckless about the next. Still, the darker truth underneath his claim is worth it confronting. All right. States often do exploit ethnic fracture. They do weaponize scarcity. We saw that in Gaza. They do play long games with social fault lines. That is that's not fantasy right there. Okay. We've seen that in history. So again, the real issue isn't whether evil plans are possible. Of course they are. The real issue is whether this speaker right here, Mr. Professor Jiang, um, has shown enough to say, has given us enough evidence to say this is the plan. And that's kind of where I remain a little bit unconvinced. I don't know. What about y'all? Go ahead and feel free to express your opinion in the live chat. Roll the video. Let's roll the video.
Empire. It has unlimited resources. It has the USD. It controls the world, right? Iran is a country that has been under economic sanctions for the past 45 years. It's poor. Its technology is very limited, okay? But as we learn in this class, actually, those nations that are poor actually have more energy. They're more open and they're more cohesive. All right, so let me give you an example. This is what we call the Shahad drones. Shahad drones. Each of these drones costs $50,000 at most, okay? At most. It can go as cheap as 35,000 US dollars. But one of them is $50,000. As you can see, you can fit a lot of these drones to a truck that can go anywhere in Iran, and they can hide anywhere. All right? So the thing to understand is, first of all, these drones are cheap. They're easy to make. They make about 500 a day. Okay? And estimates are about there's 80,000 right now that the Iranians have. So they can go on for a long, long time. Okay? And one of these drones, again, can knock out a desalination plant. It can knock out an oil field. It can knock out a hotel. It can do a lot of damage. Okay? And it's easily transportable. You can hide it anywhere. You can use it from anywhere, okay? And that's what the Iranians are using as an offensive weapon. And how do the Americans defend against this? They use something called a THAAD, right? Right, guys? This is what they use. THAAD. THAAD stands for Thermal High Altitude Air Defense. And they also have like Patriot systems. There's a lot, okay? The thing that you need to know about the system is it's really expensive. This missile, guys, costs $1 million. $1 million. So there's this $50,000 drone coming your way, and you throw a $1 million missile at it, okay? And often these missiles miss, so you have to throw 2 or 3 missiles at it, okay? So you're spending $2 to $3 million on each $50,000 that the Iranians spend. That's kind of silly. Second thing you'll notice is that this thing is really big and really slow. And therefore, you can't really move it around. Therefore, it's pretty easy for the Iranians to spot where this is and attack it. And then when these things blow up, that's a lot of money, guys. Okay? Then you're like, what? But this makes no sense. You know the Iranians have drones. They've had drones for like 10 years. You've also seen drones used in the Russia-Ukraine war to devastating effect. Why don't the Americans know this? Why did they prepare? Okay, and again, it has to do with military doctrine, because military doctrine determines how you fight a war. It determines on your bureaucracy, and it determines how you spend your resources. Okay, and unfortunately, the Americans are used to fighting something called the Cold War. Right? And the Cold War, because you can actually fight the war, you can actually use kill each other, because then people use nuclear weapons. The Cold War was about flexing. Flexing. Okay? You see how big and powerful I am? Me! Okay? That's all it was. These weapon systems are designed to scare the crap out of you. They are designed to impress.
Okay, I'm gonna take issue with that. The Cold War was, he says that's all it was. Okay. Listen, we had several proxy wars, right? We didn't confront each other directly, but right, what happened right after World War II? Okay, we had Korea, we had the Korean War. Okay, then we had the Vietnam War, not long thereafter, right? Um, and we had you know, a few other small police actions that was waged along Cold War um, lines, right? Grenada, um, I guess Panama. But remember, Central America became a hotbed of um, indirect American involvement. So unlike Vietnam and Korea, it was indirect American involvement there. Um, but you know, I heard that and I'm like, you know, I've been to Korea. I served in Korea. We lost tens of thousands of soldiers in Korea. And you probably don't know this, don't talk a lot about it in history. We um, were in direct physical contact with Chinese soldiers. We were fighting Chinese soldiers. So his assertion there is, I'm going to push back on that. Roll the video.
You. And as a result, they cost a lot of money, and they really don't do anything, all right? So that's the entire American military. It costs a lot, and it doesn't really do anything. And it's not resilient. It's not innovative. It's not open, all right? Also, the other thing I have to say this, okay, is if you look at the American military, it's corrupt. So this is really about corruption. So the Americans don't really care about winning a war. What they care about is spending as much money as possible, because then they get a cut. It doesn't make sense, right? And that's why the Americans are in a situation as they are. All right, let's continue. All right, so something that people don't really talk about, but you need to understand, it's the water issue in the GCC, in the Middle East, in Iraq. All right, so this is a map of the world. And if you are light blue, Brazil, Canada, you have nothing to worry about, because you have a lot of water, a lot of fresh water, very little population. All right? So 100% just means 100% water stress just means that you drink as much water as the environment produces. Okay? So you want to be below 100% to be sustainable. Ideally, you want to be at 10%, okay? If it goes above 100%, it means that you are drinking more water, using more water than the environment actually produces. Okay, so you're putting stress on the environment. So 20% is really bad, right? Because you're using twice as much water as the environment produces. Guess what, guys? Look at the East. Okay, Egypt, 6,420%. 883%, almost 4,000%. Dubai, 17,000%. All right? So water is a huge issue. Again, it doesn't matter if Iran kills American soldiers, destroys American military. It doesn't have to do that. All it has to do is destroy the desalination plants, and then the GCC is destroyed, okay? But it's also true that Iran has water issues. 72% is pretty bad, okay? So even though the Iranians could destroy the GCC much faster than the Americans could destroy Iran, Iran is still in trouble, okay? So let me give you an example of this. This is like, so this is another map that shows you the issue of water scarcity, okay? And it's just basically the Middle East, okay? Their biggest issue in the future is water, okay? And that's where the geopolitical tensions will arise in the future over water. India is also affected as well, okay? All right. All right, so let's look at the map, guys. This is called Lake Urmia in northern Iran. It's the 6th largest saltwater lake in the world, or it used to be. Okay, this is what it was in 1984. This is the shallow, this is the deep, okay? You guys see that? It's really big, right? 20 years later, guys, this is what it looks like. There's no more water here. You can walk from here over to there, okay? There's some water over here, but it's shallow now. That's how serious the water issue is in Iran. And that's the weak point that the Americans and the Israelis will attack, all right? They want to make sure that Iran has no access to fresh water, which will cause devastation in their nation. Okay, that's strategy number one. Strategy number two is this. This is a map of the different ethnic minorities in Iran. As you can see, it's a very diverse place. In the center are the Persians, but you also have 10 other groups as well. And in the borderlands, it's basically a different country, right? Like, these are basically different countries. And so these places have more common areas with their neighbors than they do with Iran. Okay, so the second weakness of Iran. The first is the water. The second is the ethnic makeup of the country. So the strategy of the Americans and the Israelis moving forward is to destroy Iran as a coherent nation state, divided into ethnic enclaves, and have them fight over water. That is the grand plan of the Israelis and the Americans. Okay. All right. This is the vision where Persia is limited, and then all these other places are sponsored by the Americans and the Israelis. They're given money, they're given weapons, they're given political support, and then this war will wage over water forever. Okay? And this is how you destroy Iran and make sure Iran is no longer a viable threat to you. That is the plan of the Americans. Okay? As you can see, it's a pretty evil plan. And that's why they have not announced it. Right? Because if you announce it, you're like, why are you doing this? What did the Persians, what did the Iranians ever do to you to warrant you coming and destroying their civilization? And the answer is nothing. Right? So the Americans and Israelis will never admit they're doing this. But if you look at the map of water supply, of ethnic tensions, this is the optimal game theory strategy for them to use against Iran. Okay, does that make sense? This is a long-term plan that they have in place. And it's all moving towards this plan. But now the question then is, how can the Iranians respond to this? And the answer is this. This is a map of the Muslim world. Okay? So the light green are the Sunni people, okay? That's 90% of the entire Muslim population, about 2 billion people, okay? Then you have in dark green the Shia. So as you can see, the main place of the Shia is Iran. Okay, Iran is one of the few Shia nations in the world. But you can also see from this map that Shia are spread throughout the world. Okay, and so the first thing that the Iranians want to do is create a jihad to unite all the Shia against the American Empire. All right, so what they want to do is create an uprising. And it's already happening, guys. The Shia in Pakistan stormed the American embassy in Pakistan, and the Americans killed a lot of people, okay? The Shia have attacked the American embassy in Iraq. The American embassy are being attacked in a lot of places, right? So the first strategy is to create an international global jihad of the Shia against the American Empire. And it's already happening. It will continue for a long time, because the Americans have killed the Khamenei, okay? And that requires vengeance. The other thing, though, is that it can unify the Muslim world, okay? If you look at this map, most of the Muslim world is actually run by dictatorships that are not popular at all, okay? And they're allowed to exist because of the American Empire, right? You go to Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Algeria, these places, they're all run by clients of the American Empire, right? So if you rally the people who hate their governments and you overthrow them, then that makes Iran the leader of the Islamic world. Not just the Shia world, but the Islamic world. And this creates something called Pax Islamica. That is the end goal, guys. Okay? If you do that, then you don't have to worry about the Americans and the Israelis anymore. Right? So the Israeli game plan, the American game plan, is to fracture Iran into ethnic enclaves, and they'll fight over water for the rest of their lives, and they'll all die. The Iranian game plan is to create a religious war, a crusade, that unifies the Shia people, that overthrows the American Empire and establishes something called the Pax Islamica. All right? All right. So, again, the key is the GCC.
Okay, pause the video. Pax Islamica, is that the term he used? All right. Same problem, same pattern here. He's strongest when he is describing incentives and fracture points. He's weakest when he starts talking like history has already given him some type of script. A global Shia uprising. Iran becoming leader of the Muslim world. The overthrow of American client regimes. I guess the counter empire, is that what he's talking about? Could conflict radicalize regions? Yes. Could it generate spillover? Yes. Could symbolism travel farther than missiles? Absolutely. But certainty is doing too much work here again. And this is one reason Jiang matters so much in the broader conversation. Jiang's force at his best is not that he sounds grand, it is what he sees as how grand systems can collapse through their own contradictions. He tracks pattern, pressure, and overreach. He doesn't just hand you a mythic ending and tell you to call it an analysis. And, that distinction does matter to me because, listen, once commentary becomes destiny talk, it starts feeling less like thought and more like seduction. All right, let's roll the video.
All right? So the game plan is this. You have to destroy the GCC. Why? Because the GCC is the linchpin of the American empire. So what the GCC does is this. It sells oil, and then for US dollars. Where does it put US dollars? It puts US dollars into the American stock market. All right, so this is investments of the UAE, okay, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait into the US financial markets. As you can see, from 2012 up to today, it's been exploding. All right, because the US financial markets is one of the safest places where you can put your money. The intention is this. The intention is, hey, if I cut off oil and these countries no longer have access to US dollars, they're forced to spend whatever resources they have on protecting themselves, okay? And then guess what happens? The stock market collapses. The stock market collapses. The stock market is the real growth engine of the US economy. The entire US economy collapses with it. All right? There are about maybe 7 companies in America that accounts for about a quarter of stock market growth, okay? These 7 companies, of course, are AI companies. NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, Apple, okay? These are the companies, and then these companies are heavily invested in by the GCC nations. So if these nations are no longer able to invest in the stock market, these companies will collapse in value. And with that, that would lead to economic depression in America. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so that is the situation for today. Today was just an overview, guys, okay? I know we covered a lot. I know there's a lot to take in, but over the next few weeks, we will explore each issue in depth and really understand
the
what's
collapse
really going on.
Of the world is a lot.
All right, so any questions, guys?
That's a lot to take in.
Any questions about what we've just learned? Okay.
Oh, finally, somebody has a question.
If other countries such as Italy, France, China, or Russia, they have also joined this war, like what's the cause of they join the war? Because of oil or those resources?
Okay. That's a good question, okay? So I don't want to spend too much time on this question because we will explore this question as we move along, okay? So the question is, what brings the world into this conflict? And the easy answer is just oil access, energy access, okay? They need to protect their energy supplies because remember, it's a very complicated situation because Europe is now fighting Russia. So Europe is not buying any oil resources, energy resources from Russia. Therefore, it depends a lot on the GCC. So the GCC is not providing them energy, then Europe will go bankrupt. Okay, so Europe needs to enter this war on behalf of the Americans. Okay, and then you have Russia, which cannot allow Iran to fall because if Iran falls, then they'll come after Russia next. All right, China is actually neutral. China's okay with either scenario. But that's just the way that the Chinese system is set up. Okay, so we're going to explore this question as we move along. But it's a very complicated issue. All right. Okay, and each nation will have its own different strategic interests to consider. All right, and what we need to know, what we need to figure out is that this war in the Middle East is actually connected to the Ukraine war. And then as we move along, I'll show you how these two things connect together. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Okay, great. So we'll continue this discussion on Thursday, okay?
All right, guys. Any other questions? You know, this isn't just about bombs. It's about legitimacy, all right? capital flows, the illusion that the market is some floating neutral heaven disconnected from empire. He's arguing in that last section that if the Gulf, the GCC gets destabilized badly enough, money stops flowing the same way, market sees, and parts of the American growth story starts looking a lot shakier than advertised. Now, I'm not ready to co-sign every link in that chain he's building right there, but I do think the larger point is dead on, which is war is never just about war. War reveals what an economy was secretly sitting on. War reveals which prosperity was real and which prosperity was rented. War reveals who has been living off the confidence game. And, what I cannot unsee in this whole framework he's laid out here, even when he overstates it, keeps dragging us back to the ugly truth. Our system is more brittle than our mythology allows. That that's the sight line right there for me tonight. So listen, I think that video you just saw is part insight, part overreach, part prophecy performance. And I think he's on to something when he talks about asymmetry, logistics, water shipping lanes, and the psychological hollowness of empire. And I think he gets slippery when he turns incomplete evidence into assumption. It just seems like there are a lot of assumptions in there. An assumption is not, well, he's turning assumption into destiny. And I think Jiang's lens is what keeps the conversation a little bit honest here, because Professor Jiang, as I read him, is not here to give you a horror movie trailer. He is here to ask whether the American ruling imagination is walking itself into a war it doesn't truly understand. Did you see the map of all of those ethnic um, enclaves, all those different ethnicities in Iran? I consider myself a pretty well read person. And even I didn't know that there was that much diversity within that country. I wonder how much all of the decision makers who took us into this war, I wonder how much do they really understand? You know, the question is not, can America bomb Iran? Of course it can. The question is whether America knows what comes after the bomb, whether it understands the society, the history I just talked about, and the ethnic diversity I just talked about, and the symbolic backlash, the asymmetry in this trap we seem to be walking ourselves into. That is the part empires always think they can improvise. And that's the part that buries them. Listen, it's 10:20. It's late. Thank you for rolling with me this far. Let me go ahead and give a shout out to Julie. Joined us late in the game. I hope it didn't overwhelm you. Monty Bishop, Leah B, Funny Eye Guy. Thank you for joining us. And you made it to the end here. And listen, hit that like button if you haven't already, and subscribe if you are new. And I'm going to help you out here. I should have done this earlier. I'm going to put that subscribe link in there. Blah, 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 blah. about explicit come. Man, trying to read. Let's see, did I get it right? Did I get it right? Okay, there's the link right there. Oh, no, 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 no. That's not it. It's, well, that just takes you to the website, but you can go there. I think in the upper right corner, you can hit the subscribe button. It's free to subscribe. Okay. Um, and there's also a paid subscriber link. The reason I'm able to do this kind of extensive work is because basically paid subscriptions, they buy me time to read, time to think, time to connect all of these dots. Um, and so I need you guys on Substack. Restack this. I don't know if you can restack a live, but go read the article. Um, read the article. He predicted all this. Restack it. Share it with one person who still thinks war is just foreign policy with louder sound effects. And it's late. Um, I was going to ask you if you could tell me the first moment in this video where you thought, hold on, he might be onto something, right? Was there a moment in this video where you thought, hey, this guy might be saying something? So you can express any questions or thoughts you had that you weren't able to in the chat. You can go over again, read that article. Oh, and for those who are watching on YouTube, okay, if there's anybody watching on YouTube, please hit the like button, subscribe. Okay, right? You do it all the time for content creators who have 10,000s of subscribers and they ain't gonna feel it, right? They're not gonna feel like if I get just one subscriber, like on YouTube, I will be like in heaven. I will be floating. My ego will become so inflated, my head will explode. Just one subscriber. That's how I sound thirsty. Dang, that's not good. Just subscribe. Just hit the subscribe button on YouTube. All right. I'm going to call it a night. I'm going to thank you all for hanging out with me. Here's the plan for tomorrow. Um, does anyone else want me to do kind of the same kind of lecture with his um with the next in the series? Give me a yes, give me a no. Outdoor lover, thank you for joining us. We're about to wrap it up. Okay. So M Hope. M Hope says she wants me to do another one of these in the next series. That's a Friday night, right? Friday night. Are you guys that so much of a homebody that you're gonna sit and listen to me on a Friday night? If I get one more person that says yes, I'll do it. Outdoor lover, where are you from? What country, city, state? Is anybody still alive? Are y'all falling asleep? I do that. All right. You put on a YouTube video and you fall. Okay, outdoor lover is from Houston. Thank you for joining us. If I can get one more person to just say, yes, I want to hear this lecture again, I'll do it. I've already got one. Jay and Jen, you are alive. Okay, so we got some people awake. Hey, I ain't mad at you if you fall asleep. The algorithm is still gonna give me the points for having someone tuned in. Like I said, I do it all the time on YouTube. So Jan's alive. Jan, do you want to hear another lecture series? Do you want to tune in? Will you tune in tomorrow? Anybody? Waiting for your response. Do I want to? Well, I don't want to show up to an empty room. It's a Friday night. Okay? It's a Friday. If I just two people, one person's already committed. I ain't, sitting out here running my mouth and doing all this research, right? Sitting in front of this bright light blinding me for an empty room. So I don't know. We'll see. We got one person. And thank you, M Hope. Restacked. Yes, interesting. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, this is the explicit voice of America. This is explicit. I'm out of here. Let me get some sleep, man.